Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby.
And we are playing, John, here on Katz and Cosby. We are family, and that's because Tim Walz's brother is now speaking out against him. There is like so much.
They haven't spoken in 8 years.
Yeah, and he said if the stories I could tell.
That happens amongst family.
Yeah, it definitely does. Although the brother's like posting out there saying that Kamala Harris's running mate shouldn't be anywhere near the White House. Pete, your reaction, Peter?
I tell you, nothing like family love. I'd like to see that Thanksgiving Day family dinner. God, that would be.
That would be a classic, yes. Right? By the way, speaking of Tim Walz, also, he was asked about this horrible news that, of course, has happened over in Israel, that everyone's talking about, all the protests that are now taking place, but, of course, the horrible death of 6 hostages, including one American, and they were executed, as we know, shot in the back of the head. Tim Walz was asked about it at a local fair in Minnesota, and Pete, he just kind of dodged the question, he heard the question and then was like, okay, I'm just kind of moving on. He put out a statement, in fairness to him, just a couple hours ago, but when he was, it's not a trick question. It's not a trick question.
I assume the statement put up by his staff is damage control. To me, you see what a real person is. When you ask something and you're not ready for the question and you walk away on something involving 6 hostages murdered in Israel, including one of them being an American, and he walks away. He was eating an ice cream cone or something.
Yeah, he's like, have a good day, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, that was terrible. I mean, to me, any person with any sense of feeling at all would have immediately, if it's gone on, how horrible it was, how terrible it is, what a disgrace it is, and how the United States will always stand with Israel. But instead, he walked away like they're asking him some trick question.
Yeah, like I couldn't be bothered. Have a good one.
We have a poll going on. We started it this morning, and Rich Radabali, do you have the results of the poll right now? Not yet. It's there. Instantaneous. Every time you vote, you get the total. My God.
And it's on. This is on the debate, right? This is whether the debate over the debate.
We started a poll this morning. My personal opinion was
this is now explain. This is Kamala Harris.
Kamala
and Trump.
Harris is not going to show up on the 10th because Trump is a heavyweight. He knows his stuff. I don't think Kamala Harris knows it as well as Trump. So the question is, does she get more votes if she doesn't show up? Or does she get more votes if she shows up and screws up? So you go to WABCRadio.com. Right on that website, there's a vote. Does she show up? Does she not show up?
And I think, to your point, John, if she doesn't show up, you're right. Maybe she can duck and weave and do sort of the COVID policy that Biden did, as we saw during the election, the basement strategy. On the other hand, and she might be hinting to it, Pete, because she is saying that her team is still saying they want the mics unmuted.
Right.
Trump's team is saying we agreed to the same terms that we agreed to with Biden. You switched out the candidate. We agreed to, do it with a new candidate against us, a new challenger, but the rules are the rules. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's tough to get out of this debate, but if she wants to get out, I can see why. I mean, against Dana Bash, and I've known Dana for years.
When does she get more votes? If she screws up, she screws up.
If she screws up, I think it's
show up
really
and gets
bad.
sick.
And I don't even know if it's a practical decision. This could be almost like an emotional decision. Even with Dana Bash asking softball questions, she was flustered. I mean, she made it through the interview, but if that was Donald Trump following up, she would have been a wreck, I think. I mean, I was really surprised that somebody who's been around as long as Kamala Harris has been, that she couldn't answer those questions better.
Okay, here's the result of the poll so far.
Yep.
67% of our listeners that go to the website don't believe she's going to show up. 32% believe, yes, she is going to show up.
So 2-1, they say she's going to be a no-show.
Well, she doesn't lose much if she gets sick. She gets sick. But if she goes to the debate and she really screws up like Biden did,
right,
then she lost it all.
And I'll say, John, I thought in the interview, I expected her to do better. with Dana Bash because she had a friendly interviewer who was asking questions. There were a lot of follow-ups that were not asked. That was an easy interview, and I thought she did very poorly. I expected her to do better in that interview, and who knows, there may be just so many people coming at her, and she may be falling apart behind the scenes. Who knows?
Well, she would not be able to survive this show.
Yeah, she would not. 5 minutes or 3 minutes? What do you think, Pete? What do you think? Well,
I don't know. With us today is Alan Dershowitz.
Yep.
And where's the birthday music?
Oh, yeah, we need the birthday music because we understand somebody had a great birthday.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Alan.
We love you. I hope you had a great birthday. What did you do on your birthday?
Wonderful. I had my granddaughter and her boyfriend. We had my sons were here. My wife, and we just had a good family time. We had a good time, and we put aside the woes of the world. Of course, you can't put them aside. You read about these poor hostages who were murdered in cold blood. People walked up to them. They were tied up, put a gun to their head, and just pulled the trigger against a one-armed man who was an American, a woman. How do you do that? How do human beings look at a person in the eye and say, we're about to kill you, and put a bullet in your head?
And there's no profit. They weren't given extra money to kill him. They just killed him just to kill him.
And they're supposed to be in the middle of some ceasefire talks. I mean, how could anybody, not that you would ever trust them, but it is so disgraceful. I'll tell you, I cried. I was so sad because I feel like we got to know these hostages so well, and you were rooting they'd get back out okay.
Who do you think that President Biden put the blame on? Netanyahu. He's not doing enough. Just total nonsense. He's doing everything he can do. You don't give up a country's security. You don't allow Hamas to remain in power. He did what he can do. But I want to take it out on the president of Wesleyan University. Has an op-ed in today's Times, which is one of the most hypocritical things I've ever seen. He's welcoming more protests on campus. He says they're good things. Can you imagine if these protests were being conducted by racists, calling for the lynching of black students, calling for the rape of people on campus? Do you think he would say, oh, let's have more of them, free speech? As far as I'm concerned, these Hamas demonstrations are Ku Klux Klan. They are Nazi youth. They are supporting murder and rape and beheadings. And yet this president tries to fool his students, and he did a good job because I got an email from one of his alumni. Oh, it's a free speech. It's not free speech. It's free speech for me, but not for thee. He would never, for example, even allow an anti-abortion protest on his campus. He wouldn't allow it. He would figure out some way of saying, oh, that's violent speech. It's just the most, and that's what happened at Harvard. President Gay said, oh, free speech, She discovered free speech when people were calling for genocide against the Jews. She didn't know anything about free speech before. So it's going to get worse on these campuses because these presidents of universities, even though several have been fired, they're not getting any better. And I think that trustees of Wesleyan have to look at the president of Wesleyan for making that outrageous statement that he supports free speech. He doesn't support free speech. He only supports free speech if it's against Jews and in favor of Hamas.
Alan, this is Pete King. First of all, happy birthday to you. I have a very basic question. Now, if the murder, the assassinations of these six people, innocent people, if that doesn't knock out this whole argument of moral equivalency, what is going to? Even today, President Biden is blaming Netanyahu. He said Netanyahu's not doing enough, as if these are two equal parties. It's like two friends are having a fight. We have to decide how we resolve it. One is good, one is evil. When is that message going to get across and break through academia, break through the political world?
It's not getting across because they don't give a damn about morality. It's morality for me, but not for thee. They'll claim all kinds of morality on one side, but then they'll say, oh, but they're under occupation. Don't you understand? They're under occupation. They can do anything. They can rape. They can behead. They can murder. That's what these kids are saying on college campuses. They interviewed some of them. They were saying, well, nothing wrong with what happened on October 7th. It's an occupation, and you can resist occupation. They're making it sound like, they're abolitionists resisting slavery. There's a dispute over, first of all, Gaza wasn't occupied. There wasn't a single Israeli or a single Jew in Gaza. and there was a ceasefire in place, and then they went and they murdered 1,200 people and kidnapped 1,200. Where's the moral equivalence? There's no moral equivalence. Our entire sense of morality is being thrown out of the window by this disproportionate support for the Palestinians. The Palestinians are the least deserving political group in the world for statehood. They were offered it 7 times. They turned it down. They used terrorism. What about the Kurds? What about the Uyghurs? What about all the people who deserve? What about the people who are starving today in Darfur, in places in Africa? African leaders don't care about them. Black lives don't matter if they're taken by black people.
Alan, wasn't Avi Eben who said
Palestinians by white people?
Wasn't Avi Eben who said the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity?
Yeah, and they don't know how to take yes for an answer. But I want to hear from the black leaders. I want to hear from Sharpton. Why is he not saying a word about Darfur? Why is Barack Obama, who hasn't said a word as far as I know about these murdered hostages, why isn't he talking about what's going on?
It goes beyond that. I really, on my Saturday morning breakfast, I really came out and really was, I just couldn't take it anymore. I said, look what happened in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, all these women, they have no rights anymore.
Yeah,
where is the women's rights movement?
Right, silent.
And environmentalists, this problem in the Red Sea could be 4 times worse than the Exxon Valdez. Where is the environmentalist? Nothing.
No, it's all about left. It's all about left and right. If you're on the right, nothing is right. If you're on the left, everything is correct.
President Biden has made so many mistakes. I have nothing against him, but he has made so many mistakes. And you know what I really was upset about? When we do the calculation, 500,000 Russians and Ukrainians have died because of the stupidity and the bad moves that he made in Afghanistan. We gave Afghanistan to China, and Putin says, well, how about me? I want to take Ukraine.
Look, I never had anything against Biden. He was my friend. I met him in 1980. We've had meals together. We've talked together. I have something against him now. When he speaks at the Democratic Convention and says that the thugs, the Hitler Youth outside, have some good points, when he says that, I have it against him. When he blames Netanyahu and says he's not doing enough, you don't butt in on another country's national security concerns. Netanyahu knows a lot about what's going on in the Philadelphia corridor and what would happen if they allowed Hamas troops to come back there. Than President Biden did when he was vacationing on the beach. He comes off the beach and he says, oh, Netanyahu's not doing enough. No, I have something against him at this point.
By the way, Professor Dershowitz, Israeli officials are coming out.
500,000 deaths.
Yeah.
Russians and Ukrainians and Israelis are on President Biden's shoulders.
Well, and that's
right?
I
that
agree, John.
Go out.
Well, John, you could say maybe October 7th wouldn't have happened. A lot of things wouldn't have happened.
October 7th wouldn't have happened.
I agree. It's
we
weakness.
gave Iran so much money they had nothing to do with it. They hired all the Houthis.
And when Trump was in, they had Arab states actually signing peace agreements with Israel.
Right. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's why October 7th occurred.
Yes.
In an attempt to try to prevent Israel and Saudi Arabia from signing an agreement. And it's working.
Yep.
The tragedy of October 7th is going to be repeated over and over and over again because it's working. It's turning America against Israel. It today turned Great Britain against Israel. Great Britain announced it will restrict some defense shipments to Israel. It's turning the UN. It's turning the International Criminal Court.
And by the way, there are some Democrats today saying the same thing, that maybe Kamala Harris may start being selective on what weapons. But before I let you go, also, Professor Dershowitz, today some Israeli officials came out and they said what Biden said was, quote, remarkable and dangerous. I mean, they threw our ally under the bus.
The same people speaking for Joe Biden are speaking for Kamala. What makes anybody think that anything's going to change?
Yeah, and that's the sad thing, John.
No, she's going to be worse. She's going to be worse than he was. He has a place in his heart for Israel. I don't think she has a place in her heart for Israel. I have never seen it. I've never seen it in her husband's heart as well. Certainly not in his stepdaughter's heart. And I don't have any faith that Kamala Harris will be as supportive of Israel as Joe Biden has been, which has not been recently very supportive at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Professor Dershowitz, thank you very
May
much.
your birthday present
Thank
be
you.
peace.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor. We love you. And joining us now, we have Ron Vitello. He is the former chief of Border Patrol, also retired acting ICE director. First of all, Ron, what the heck is going on in Aurora, Colorado? You see these armed Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment buildings.
It's incredible. Thanks for inviting me, Rita. What we're seeing in Aurora, and it's being felt and seen by others in other cities in the United States, is a vicious conflagration of woke, idealistic policies that negate federal law. In what sense? In sense that people break the law to come into the United States. They break other laws in our communities, are arrested, and the local authorities will not refer these cases to ICE immigration enforcement because their woke leadership won't let them. And so you have this situation in which criminals are protected. Only criminals are protected by sanctuary city policies. They're protected in such a way that they feel bold enough to be in the United States and commit crimes at the expense of landlords and people who rent apartments in Aurora, Colorado. It's really incredible that in 2024, gangsters from the third world are setting the agenda for cities and towns in America.
Yeah, it is. You know, there was also a new report that came out, Ron Vitello, that said that Venezuelan gangs are linked to at least 100 serious crimes across this country. And I think about the guy who killed Laken Riley in Georgia. That was that nursing student, very high profile case, tied to a Venezuelan gang. It says Tren de Aragua. How serious is it for every
here in New York
community?
City attacking cops.
Yeah, same guy. Exactly, Pete. Exactly.
They're not only attacking, they're shooting them.
Right. We're incredibly in danger through the likes of gangs like Tren de Aragua. You know, we all are familiar with Mara Salvatrucha number 13, MS-13. They're a scourge across this country and in the hemisphere. Tren de Aragua, just a brief history for us right here today. From 2017 to 2022, there were no recorded arrests at the border for Tren de Aragua individuals. So that gang, for law enforcement purposes in the United States, did not exist before 2022. In Venezuela, they were so powerful, so vicious, and so effective that they controlled the federal penitentiary system in Venezuela. So this is not just some run-of-the-mill gangsters, some people that are high on narcotics that are, going to go through a crime spree. This is a dedicated, vicious criminal organization that effectively destabilized the Maduro government in such a way that they controlled federal penitentiaries. Now they are here in sufficient numbers, in such numbers that we just talked about what happened in New York. We see what's happening in Aurora, Colorado, but Houston, Denver, Dallas, Miami, and Chicago are all open source reporting, local media reports of this gang fighting for illicit drug sales in each and every one of those cities.
Wow. Peter King.
Yeah, Ron Vitello, this is former Congressman Pete King. I want to thank you for the great work you've done over the years. You mentioned MS-13. That was in my congressional district. And there was murder after murder after murder until President Trump came in. And then with ICE and HSI and U.S. attorneys, they got heavily involved.
They cleaned it out.
President Trump twice came to that district. And after that, there were no murders at all by MS-13 in that district. Now, they're still there, but they're underground. And the fact is they were crushed. And it was, again, it surely can be done. And President Trump gets very little credit for that. But I saw it firsthand, the great work that can be done when you have a commander-in-chief who wants to get it done.
Correct. If you have that kind of leadership at the White House, and I thank you, Congressman, for your leadership on the issues around Homeland Security and protecting your constituency and the rest of the country. But this is something we do not have to suffer from if you had bold leadership in the White House like Donald Trump, who said, we are not going to allow gang members to set the agenda for organized crime in this country, in neighborhoods, in our own cities. And MS-13 is an example of where law enforcement engaged. And I'll give you another brief history. Briefly after 9/11, George W. Bush put in place the Secure Communities Program. Every city in America, every jurisdiction in America that held people in custody for local crimes reported the immigration status of those detainees to ICE. They were referred to ICE and removed. Record numbers of removals from the time that was instituted all the way through the first term of Barack Obama. Not that long ago, we had almost all of the cities in America cooperated with ICE because they knew if they've gotten those gangsters off the street, they made their community safer. We've forgotten the lessons of 9/11. We've forgotten the lessons of MS-13 because the White House and the leadership of Biden and Harris have put us all at risk. They could care less about Americans. They can't claim to care about this country and the people who live in it when they continue to degrade what happens at the border and in our communities each and every day.
And Ron, before we let you go, you were, remind me, right, if this is correct, you were on Capitol Hill when Kamala Harris gave that famous sort of ICE's KKK, that immigrations and customs enforcement are actually equated to KKK.
Yeah, I was fortunate to be nominated by President Trump to run ICE in the confirmation hearing where she was supposed to be vetting my credentials for the job. She took the opportunity to lambast the men and women of the front line of ICE and made them akin to the KKK. That's the kind of leader she is. That's the kind of person she is. And this conversion for being a hawk on security in the U.S. is just nonsense for her to get elected.
Yeah, wow, that is stunning. Well, Ron Vitello, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate the men and women there of ICE that are doing such a tough job to protect all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great being with you.
Thank you. And let's take a break right now. We're going to come back, let's see, with Doug Schoen to see what's going on in the Democratic Party.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Cats and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, we are back here on Cats and Cosby. We're also looking at our WABC poll to see if is she going to do a debate or not do a debate.
Doug Schoen, what do you think? We have a poll, and our listeners are saying that 67% of our listeners are saying something's going to happen and it's not going to happen, and 32% saying that she will show up.
Yeah, I think she'll show up. I think she'll show up once. Whether she shows up again is very much to me an open question. But my sense is she's going to show up, and it'll be up to Trump to try to make the case against her, which so far he hasn't.
Where does she end up in better shape? If she gets sick and doesn't show up and stay in the basement like President Biden did in 2020, or if she shows up and really screws up?
I think she does better if she shows up, holds her own, doesn't embarrass herself, and makes a credible showing, and then goes back to the basement.
How do you think she did in the interview, Doug? I mean, I actually thought she would have done better. I don't think she did a good job.
No, I don't think so either. But the question is not, did she do a good job or not, but did it hurt her in the polls? And I don't think, Rita, that it hurt her much in the polls. So while the interview wasn't that great, it was 16 minutes. She gave them, basically memorized answers, and so far doesn't look like it's caused her much harm.
Is it too early to tell, Doug? Because
it may be. That's a fair point. But look, she didn't hit it out of the park. And I think most observers believe that she got an extraordinary bump out of the circumstances of her selection as the nominee, a successful convention. And I think, the electorate is evenly divided in this country. We saw that in 2016 and 2020, and I think there's every reason to believe we'll see the same in 2024.
Yeah, it's going to be a nail-biter. Peter King.
Yeah, Doug, great to talk to you as always. Happy Labor Day.
Same to you,
okay.
Congressman.
As far as the polling, obviously her numbers went up dramatically after she was selected by Joe Biden to be a successor. She did not get a big bump out of the convention. So is it mainly that the numbers have gone back to what they were before Biden's downfall? I mean, it seems to me that we're basically where we were for the last 3 years almost. Or certainly, where we were 4 years ago.
I think she got her bump with her selection. Right. I think the convention did very little for her. The last three credible polls that I've seen have it about +1 for her. which effectively is a tie, and then you add in the fact that Trump always underpolls his vote, you're looking at an election that, to me, is effectively tied. And I guess if I had to bet today, I'd bet on Trump, but it's very close, as it was in the last two elections.
You know, what do you think about all the RFK stuff? And now Tulsi Gabbard is apparently helping him also with debates. But you've got Tulsi Gabbard last week interviewing in the sort of town hall style with Trump. You have also RFK out there. Do you think that helps them? And especially if they get more active sort of on the campaign trail? And what if like a Nikki Haley gets out there on the campaign trail for Trump?
I think Nikki Haley can do more than all of them for him, if in fact
I agree. Yeah.
she gets out on the stump. And if I were Trump, I would get her out on the stump because he needs her votes. That being said, I think two of the unrecognized benefits that he has are Cornel West and Jill Stein. They could get a couple of points away from Kamala Harris, and that could be enough to elect him. And I think JFK Jr.'s vote will probably go to her on balance, and that could be worth another point and a half to him.
Yeah, which in a tight election is everything.
Exactly.
What about Doug? We finally saw President Biden today. He got off the beach. He was on the beach for a while. He gets off the beach. And he is apparently going to be with her today in Pennsylvania and says that he's going to be with her a bit in the next few weeks. Does that help her, hurt her? What do you think?
I think they want him to campaign so they can't say, oh, you know,
she kicked him in the back, or
right. But on the other hand, if I were working for her, I would say, Mr. President, we don't want to overstress you. One appearance in Philadelphia, maybe one the end of the month, one in early October, a get out the vote rally, and thank you very much.
Doug, this is Pete King again. I don't want to make any kind of a political issue out of the hostages being killed in Israel. Maybe it was just a bad moment for Tim Walz. But when he was asked what he thought about it today, he was standing there eating an ice cream cone, and he walked away. He said, "That's it."
Yeah, he didn't answer.
To me, that is such a question that anyone running for office should have just taken the opportunity to denounce Hamas.
Congressman, anyone who is a thinking, caring person should condemn in the strongest possible terms the brutality of a vicious, sick, twisted terrorist group, Hamas. They knew the Israelis were coming, and they killed them in cold blood. That's not politics. That is just
so. Why would Walz? Is there any excuse at all for Walz?
No, not that I can think of.
To me, it was disgraceful. It's morally indefensible.
Yeah, you know what? And Doug, let's be honest. Yeah. I mean, they seem to be trying to placate Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's in Minnesota. I hate to say that,
but those assassinations should have crossed every line.
Yeah, I agree, Pete.
Well,
I agree.
What Congressman King said is what I believe. You can have any view you want on how to resolve this, on a peace treaty, permanent ceasefire, temporary ceasefire. You can have any view you want. What Hamas did to those six, including one Israeli American,
it's reprehensible.
Is an obscenity that should be seen as such.
I agree, which is why, Doug, it wasn't a trick question for Governor Walz. I 100% agree. And the fact he dodged on it, to me, was really telling, really sadly, very, very telling. Doug, we love you. Thank you so much for being here, Doug, on Labor Day.
Thank you. Happy New Year, John and Congressman King.
Thank you.
Thank you, and happy Labor Day.
Happy Virgos month.
Yeah, exactly.
And Rita, let's go to some hot news right now.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, as you just heard here on Katz and Cosby, we were talking also at the top about President Biden saying that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu isn't doing enough to secure a hostage deal with Hamas. He made those statements at the White House today. He also said that he spoke to the parents of that Israeli American hostage that was found dead over the weekend in the tunnels in Gaza. Also, Vice President Kamala Harris and President Biden are holding a joint campaign event in Pittsburgh today. This is the first time that they have campaigned together since Biden dropped out of the race or was forced out in the race for the White House. And also in New York, the NYPD says that multiple people, as many as 6 people, may have been shot this afternoon at New York City's West Indian Day Parade. Shots rang out about 3 p.m. local time on the Eastern Parkway Parade route, and we will keep you posted on all of that. And those are the hot Goya stories of the day.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC. Breaking news, WABC.
And we have been talking a little bit about this West Indian Day Parade that, of course, takes place every year in Brooklyn. Just now getting some more word about the shootings. There was a lone male gunman who opened fire into the crowd. There were reports that as many as 6 people were shot, and one of them shot in the head. And Peter King, there's always a lot of violence at this parade, it seems.
You know, we have all sorts of ethnic events and parades in New York. I don't know of shootings anywhere except at this West Indian parade. I remember several years ago, Governor Cuomo
Is it the culture?
Killed.
What is it?
I have no idea. And also this morning, you saw all the top brass of the NYPD was there. They did everything to keep it safe. I mean, no other parade has that level of police security, and yet still have people getting shot. I think 5, 6 have been shot. It's horrible. At least one very seriously.
Yeah, with the shot in the head.
It's something, I don't know. Maybe they have to keep having the parade, but if they can't get better control of it, I think maybe it's time to call it off.
Yeah, it seems like every year there's some shooting that takes place at it. I don't know why. Wow, it's really
and a guy getting shot in the head, it doesn't sound good.
Yeah, that is really serious, really. We'll keep you guys posted, of course. Also, a lot of people talking about what's going on in Israel. What are the next steps militarily? And also, Gold Star families coming to President Trump's defense after Kamala Harris says it was a political stunt that he went to Arlington National Cemetery. And joining us now to talk about all of this here on Katz and Cosby is Brigadier General Blaine Holt. He's a retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General, former C-17 combat commander, and also former U.S. Deputy Military Representative to NATO. General Holt, first, your reaction. What does Israel have to do now? Netanyahu said that just a few minutes ago that Hamas is going to feel the pain like never before after executing 6 hostages.
Oh, it's so good to be with you on the show today, but just under what horrible circumstances. And once again, true to form, this administration not standing by our ally in their time of greatest need. And so, right after Vice President Harris made Netanyahu's might go cold, the Israelis have had a stark reminder every single day just about that they have to go this on their own. They have to see this victory through. They've got to cut the head off of this snake and other snakes like it. But keeping Hamas alive will only beget more October 7th. And to be very clear, you feel for all these families. I understand the protesters, but this is a war, and the sad realities are that you don't let your enemy succeed. You will get more of what you don't want, and you will see thousands more killed if they're allowed to survive this.
General, this is former Congressman Pete King. Thank you for your service over the years.
Thank you for yours.
And, thank you. But to me, this would be like if in February or March of 1945, suddenly we were condemning FDR and the United States because some innocent people may have been killed in Germany. I mean, the fact is, it is war. And Israel's not intending to kill civilians, but those things happen. And the ones who caused all this are Hamas. And this whole moral equivalency drives me absolutely insane.
Yeah, and the dearth of leadership out of D.C. is what just throws gasoline on the fire. So go back to your example. FDR had fireside chats for a reason. It was to explain the war that they couldn't see, that was over there, that had to be explained to them when they saw those film footages of this is the bombing of Dresden, this is what 8th Air Force is doing, this is D-Day. That's not what's happening in D.C. In fact, they're doing the opposite when they say things like they did today, saying, well, Netanyahu's not doing enough to create peace. There would be no hostage incident whatsoever had Hamas not engaged in what they did on October 7th. And they took those people for a reason, and you're seeing that reason play out today.
I want to switch gears, too, before we let you go, General. The Gold Star families came out this weekend. That was wild. These are the families who lost loved ones, of course, of the 13 U.S. service members at Abbey Gate during that disastrous withdrawal by the Biden-Harris administration from Afghanistan. And then so Trump goes on the anniversary. He goes to Arlington National Cemetery at the request of the Gold Star families. And Kamala Harris, who, again, was part of the withdrawal, hasn't even said the families' names yet to date. They said she's never called them. They feel like Biden has totally thrown them under the bus. And then she says it's a political stunt. And the Gold Star families over the weekend came out and said, you know what? We invited Trump and they went for it after Kamala Harris. Your reaction?
I just find it reprehensible. Not only do we go back to when the dignified transfer happens in our minds and we remember a president all masked up, not engaging with the families, checking his watch to see when the ceremony is going to get over. Well, this time, instead of just honoring these people that died out of a result of this administration's decisions, he goes to the beach. And she's nowhere to be found. And yet then the day after, at least a president showed up for those people and displayed moral and courage and authority and was there with them. And then they throw rocks at him and to throw gasoline on top of the fire. You've got a former administration official in John Bolton getting out there and also throwing rocks at President Trump for being an honorable, decent human being, hanging a wreath, which any American in this country would like to. And let me remind everybody, this is the same national security team that brought you Kabul and to this world to the brink of World War III, where we find ourselves right now today. Not one resignation. People getting promoted, in fact, and it's just, it's beyond the pale of decency.
And John, you've talked about also just the bad policies that have led to hundreds of thousands of deaths, like Russia, Ukraine.
Between Russians and Ukrainians, 500,000 people have died only because of the way we withdrew out of Afghanistan. So those 500,000 people have to be on President Biden's shoulders.
No, they are. And furthermore, that war there was a deterrable war. It was like a slow-speed, slow-motion train wreck that anybody could have stopped at any time. Putin was very clear. Nobody should condone the thuggery or the violence from the Russian invasion. But just a base out-of-school diplomat who worked in the consular section of the Pakistani embassy could have handled this one. And it's very sad because this weakness now has created global conflict and war almost on every continent now. Asia is on the brink. You've got North Africa. You've got the Middle East. You've got Europe. And no display of leadership at all in fact, quite the opposite. As we go into worlds where we have no strategy, no diplomacy. But don't you worry, we'll get up and tell you that you need to pay more taxes for no apparent reason.
Well, thank you so much, General, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, General. Thank you, General Holt. Thank you.
And now let's go to, Chief Tony Carbonetti.
Absolutely.
Where is Tony?
Yep.
Who invited Carbonetti on?
I know. What could a day
He's
be?
on
It
the
is
beach.
Labor Day.
Oh,
give
my
respect.
I'm still on the beach in Spring Lake, New Jersey, guys.
He's laboring
Give
on
respect
the
to a
beach.
person on the beach.
Tony, talk about some of the voter rolls, because you have a history of. We were talking the other day with Glenn Youngkin, who was cleaning some of the voter rolls in his
Tony
state.
defended when Rudy Giuliani was running for mayor. They had like a lawyer at every poll. And tell us about that.
Well,
are we any better today?
Time in 1989, when we knew there was a lot of shenanigans, we were very well prepared for
Tony, that's an Irish word you're
re-race
using
in
now,
1993.
Tony,
Shenanigans. I'm in the Irish Riviera.
Okay, that's okay. They let you in? Okay.
So what we did was we had a lot of poll watchers that actually made sure people were registered properly, They stood at the polls to make sure people weren't busing. But what they would do is they'd bring 40 people in a bus. They would say, go in and tell them, here's your name, because no one checks ID. And 40 people would vote at that polling site. Then they would bus them to another polling site, have the same 40 people vote someplace else. So we had people at the sites watching out for that. If a bus pulled up, they wrote down the license. They called over to the other polling site to make sure they weren't stopping there. You had to do everything you could to make sure they weren't stealing votes. That's how they do it in big cities. It's not that hard. If you really want to do it, you can go steal votes in big cities.
So the worst thing is then, when they have early elections for 45 days, there's no way you can watch all the polls for 45 days.
John, I could vote. You give me 10 different names, I could vote 10 different times if they're not asking for ID.
Right. And also, what about ballot harvesting? Tony, what about ballot harvesting, where you can go to like a nursing home and say, hey, would you sign this, all 200 of you, for Kamala?
You mean you're going to mail 500 ballots to one nursing home and then expect 480 people to, someone drop off 480 votes and nothing bad's going to happen? Who believes that? Of course something bad's going to happen.
So what do they need to do? Like, what do they need to do this election time?
We got 60 days to go.
Right. Yeah. What do they need to do? Because this is serious.
Last time the president complained about it and quite honestly did nothing beforehand. Now he has to go to court early. He has to fight the states that are going to mail out ballots that don't have the right to mail out ballots. You have to sue before the votes are cast. Remember in Pennsylvania, he wanted to fight it, but once you mail out a ballot, if the state mails you a ballot, you did nothing wrong. You have to prevent them from mailing that ballot out. You have to go to court and stop it. That's what he has to fight it early. He can't wait till after the fact.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I brought up how last week we talked to Glenn Youngkin, of course, Virginia governor, and he was telling us that in his state, they found thousands of people that were, quote, non-citizens, that were on the voter rolls. We had Ken Paxton, the AG of Texas, telling us in Texas, they found 6,500. I mean, you think about it, a close election.
Tony Carbonetti downtown.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's a lot.
Yeah, what you have to do is just tell the Board of Elections to cross their voter list with the citizenship list. It's not that hard. In today's world, it takes 2 seconds with computers. But someone has to tell them to do it. The Governor Youngkin told his voter board to do it, which is good.
But they need to do it, just like you said. There needs to be a will, and it can't be like state by state. Some states and other states not.
Well, the states run the elections.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy.
Tony,
the states run them.
Go back to the beach. Enjoy yourself tonight.
The Italian Riviera.
Thank you for contributing your 2 cents.
I'll see you guys next week.
Okay, we'll see you when you come back.
Thank you, Tony. Have fun.
Let's take a break. And who are we coming back with?
We have former federal prosecutor Doug Burns with some new updates on the Trump legal cases. Stay with us.
Don't hang up.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby on this Labor Day. Rita Cosby, John Catsimatidis, and also Congressman Peter King. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Doug Burns. Doug, no rest for the weary this week. There's going to be a big hearing on Wednesday, and this is with Judge Tanya Chutkin. It's the Jack Smith special prosecutor case on January 6th. They both filed like their legal paperwork late into the night on Friday. What do you think is going to happen this week? What does she have to decide, and who do you think has the better argument?
Well, it's interesting. The case is kind of on life support. Unfortunately, it was made all about, can you get a case to trial before an election? As I said, in 38 years of practicing federal criminal law, never once, not one time ever, did anybody ever have a discussion in a case I was in about the timing of a case vis-a-vis an election. So where we stand, to answer your question real simple, is, Smith made sort of a cautious retreat. He tried to remove from the indictment stuff that was, obviously presidential. But again, it doesn't matter because they still have to litigate lots of other material about what's official, what's unofficial, never going to happen before the election. And it will be fascinating to me to see the zeal or lack thereof in the discussions about the case after the election. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I think it'll largely, almost completely go away.
Yeah, and he's trying to resurrect the classified documents case because that's his other case there in Florida. But I agree with you. I mean, you look at the time frame. And then in the middle of all this, too, also, Doug Burns, the other case is not this week, but it will happen soon afterwards on the 18th. I mean, it's amazing. You got the debate. We've been talking about whether she'll appear or not. We'll see. Right. So you got the debate. And then on the 18th, that's when Judge Marchand in New York is supposed to sentence Donald Trump. And that's, look at the window at that time. I mean, look how close we are. Again, very close to Election Day. What do you think could happen there? We've had a lot of big legal experts, Doug Burns, on the show. We had Andy McCarthy and John Yoo. They were both saying that they think he might get sentenced. That based on the history, the way this judge has been so over the top, they don't put it past him. What do you think's going to happen?
With the obvious recognition that those are great legal experts, I'm going to disagree with them, and I'll tell you why. You have to back up 2 days to September 16th. That's when the judge is supposed to decide this question of the extent to which the immunity ruling from the Supreme Court impacts the New York City case. We know Marchand, so we know the answer, which is no, it doesn't. That's going to be clear. However, we got a huge window of reading tea leaves when the Trump team asked for more time to have the sentencing go past the election, and Alvin Bragg weighed in and said he did not oppose that. Repeat, did not oppose that. And by the way, he got specific in the filing and said, look, once Marchand rules on immunity on the 16th, Trump can immediately appeal that. So there's no way that you can go forward with sentencing on the 18th. So that's my prediction. I could be wrong. I'm not always right. And I don't think it's going to go forward. And I've said before, and I'm going to say again, I don't think he's going to be sentenced before the election takes place.
So, it's interesting, Doug, and you're right about the timing. Obviously, there's that hearing that's 2 days before it.
Right.
But a lot of people think, and again, this is what Andy and John Yoo were saying, they believe that he's just going to disregard it, that even though Alvin Bragg is saying, yeah, I don't care, you can extend it, which I agree is very interesting and telling on that end. But they just think Judge Marchand just seems so intent, even if it doesn't happen where he actually goes behind bars, but that he might actually get sentenced because he wants to have a bit of a feather in his cap. And because this whole thing seems like politics. I mean, if you really look at it, Judge Marchand should have recused himself. Look at his daughter is making so much money. The daughter's firm is making so much money. He donated to Joe Biden. I mean, that to me is blatant conflict of interest, but yet he's going forward.
The really, really, really cynical move, and even this judge, I don't think has it in him to do this, is you give Trump like 2 years, seriously, imprisonment. Obviously, you keep him out on bail pending appeal. That's like a multiple year period, 18 months, 2 years. A high likelihood that the case is going to be reversed, in which case the sentence is academic. But 10 times more importantly, for political purposes right now, then you have the Jamie Raskins of the world going on saying, you see that the conduct clearly warranted imprisonment, and they go on and on. Don't think that's going to happen, actually, because, again, I don't think he's going to be sentenced before the election. But, again, that would be the really, really, really cynical move. Give him prison time. He's out on bail pending appeal, and then everybody forgets about it, and he never does 5 minutes in custody ever.
Yeah, that's what I think a lot of people, and some people are thinking, just based on the way that this Judge Marchand just seems to be steamrolling everything. Peter King.
I mean, again, Doug, great having you on. I just, Thanks. To me, talk about an attack on democracy by Trump. The right to a speedy trial is with the defendant, and yet out of the way, the media, the Democrats, the administration are talking about this rush to judgment against Trump. And no one talks about that being such a violation of a basic precept of American justice.
That's a great point. I've made that point feeling like I'm doing into the wind on media, Peter, saying, look, You gave that rule earlier about I've never seen in 38 years, I've never seen the government ask for a speedy trial because, as you explained so perfectly a minute ago, Peter, it's the defendant's right to a speedy trial. So everything was turned on its head. They were hysterical to get this to trial. And on your point about saying Trump's a threat to democracy, want to address that. It seems perfectly apparent to me that the playbook, and you would know more than me, Peter, is to simply accuse your opponent of that which you yourself are doing.
In spades, absolutely.
Yeah, it just seems so, like you just said, it's such lawfare. And I wonder, too, Doug, if they want to, just like you said, if they want to be able to say, oh, he is a convicted felon,
exactly.
Just because technically you're not convicted till you're sentenced. So maybe they'll throw out a sentence just to have it. So then they could use that as a talking point in their campaign ads, which has just been just crazy. Doug Burns, thank you. We love having you on. We're so glad to have you here on Labor Day, too, Doug. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Well, it's been a long day.
It has. It's been a busy Labor Day. My goodness.
Now, we have to decide what we're going to do with Superman.
Yeah. Oh, I know. With all the changes.
He went to the United Nations, the new Superman from the hedge fund that has gone woke.
He's gone woke.
He went to the United Nations and declared himself a world citizen and not from the United States of America.
I don't know. Maybe I think in the meantime we keep playing it because I like the music.
But the words truth, justice, and the American way, I think, stand.
I do too.
So let that hedge fund go broke.
Yes.
Go woke, go broke.
I think
I'm going to find the name of the hedge fund, and we will disclose it to the world.
Oh, let's do that. I love that. And in the meantime, what do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.